Luno, the fastest, easiest way to buy Bitcoin. If you're just getting into crypto, it's the perfect place to start. Hey guys, and welcome back to my show. I'm really excited to jump straight into this one because this is going to be a fun topic. Put it this way, I've been trying to get this guy on for quite a few, maybe like over a year now, I think it's been. So I'm very excited. But before we jump in, it is powered by Icon Plus Capital. So quick news announcement for you. So the new DeFi platform running on Icon is now live. On balance, you can stake ICX as collateral to borrow USD interest free. And also they provide around 7% daily interest on yield farming rewards. Now, this is also sponsored by BlockFi. So quick shout out to them. You can get up to 8.6% interest on your USDC. So I'll leave a link for you somewhere and everywhere. Now, before I bring on my guest, if you are watching on YouTube, please don't forget to hit subscribe, hit the like button so you never miss any of these brilliant guests. So today joining me, like I said, is someone I have been trying to get on for quite some time. Who's a Bitcoin advocate, investor, financial consultant, and the founder and CEO of the financial consulting firm, Atlantic Financial. It is Bruce Fenton. Bruce, how are you?
Great. How are you? Great to see you.
Yeah, it's really good to see you. As I was saying, I think I've been trying to chat to you, have a good podcast, have a good chat for maybe over a year now.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I used to do these once in a while, and I haven't done a lot for quite some time. I've done some Clubhouses, but I haven't appeared on any. I don't know. This may be one of the first in a while. Maybe I've done a few in the last year, if that. So I don't do too many of them.
Well, I feel honored, but you mentioned Clubhouse, which is pretty interesting. What are your thoughts on that right now? Because I think I read some news the other day that the downloads of that is actually going down.
Yeah, they kind of have to because they had so many, soon everybody will have it. But I think it's great. I wish I would have sent a check to them and tried to invest. I had an idea. By the time I heard about it, everybody, I was pretty early, but the other, I was user number about 4,800, but I think like 4,000 of the other ones were all VCs. So it wasn't like it was a secret, so it would have been easy for them to raise money. But I thought about just sending, I've heard of investors sending a check and just saying, hey, let me in on your next round, like no terms, no nothing. I thought about taking a risk and doing that. It might have been early enough. I don't know if they would have, but I sure wish I would have invested. I knew for sure this one was going to be a big hit, and it has been. It's a great format. So that's cool.
You don't think it's sort of like hit its peak and it's potentially coming down from there?
Probably not its peak. I think it hit its initial adoption curve, kind of. That you can only be hot and new once. But it still has a ways to go. I don't even know if they have Android yet, but once they do that, they should have quite a bit, quite a bit more users. And I think there will be more people that have large followings, that have large rooms, and some podcasts that migrate there and other things. So it's still early. I would imagine it's probably going to be a pretty cool looking platform in a few years. But there may be others. The other thing is it's easy for somebody else to come and replace it.
Yeah. Too. Yeah, that's the thing with social media these days. It's just a matter of everybody just copying what everybody's doing. I mean, even going back a few years, Snapchat did the stories, Instagram, Twitter with the spaces. It's just one thing after the other. But I want to go back a little bit, learn a bit more about you and how you initially got into the space before we talk about everything that I've been dying to speak to you about.
Sure. Yeah, I started in the investment business when I was a little kid. Basically, my mom was a stockbroker. And I kind of grew up in the brokerage firm floor. I would come there every day after school, not just some days, but every day I'd come there and I'd just play on the floor and listen to the brokers talking. And this was a different time, the 80s, especially it was more like the crypto space. It was exciting. There was a lot of money. It was, there's brokers yelling, there's drama, people arguing with each other. They even in those days when I was a little kid, they were still like verbally doing orders. So people would be yelling across the floor, buy 300 shares, and I thought that was really cool. And we had the crazy kind of cool stories like we have in crypto. My mom came home one day and told me about somebody in her office who got arrested, and the SEC came. The SEC came with the police and the FBI, and they arrested somebody. Wow. And so it's just crazy. It was a crazy industry, and so I was interested in that very young. And when I was 14, I got like a real job there as an assistant. back when you were allowed to do that. You were even allowed to call customers.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. I mean,
insane.
and you have to be licensed to do most of the things. To they made it more strict about what you had to be. You used to be able to kind of call and sort of pre-qualify people and cold call for a broker, but now you need to be licensed to do that. But so I started very early, and I did that. When I was a little kid, all the way through my teens. And then when I got out of the Navy, I went and got a full-time job at Dean Witter, which was as a stockbroker / financial advisor. So I did that for 20 something years, or about around 20 years, and I focused on emerging markets and emerging technologies, and that went well. We were early on the internet, and we did well with the dot-com boom and bust. We called the bust, actually, and then. So I was familiar with this kind of thing. So crypto was a natural thing for me. I was interested in free markets, economics, globalization, technology. It sort of checked all those boxes for me. So I got into crypto about 8 years ago and sort of started working full time. There wasn't really like paid work or companies. There was only, I think, 2 or 3 companies that had venture funding, and there was probably only half a dozen jobs that were paid. There was like Gavin Andreessen, and I became executive director of the Bitcoin Foundation. So we would pay, or that organization used to pay those kind of salaries. And so I've been in it ever since, and I've been interested in the things that converge those 2 areas that I came from, securities and crypto and Bitcoin, and the rest is history, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating because you've been able to see such a change in that financial space. Like you were saying, back when you were 14, they were making, actual calls and all these things. And I think that Wild West is sort of what we're seeing now. And you can make those synergies in some ways. But you've been really vocal when it comes to DeFi. I remember you did that video, and it was like the drawing and the fire, and that was fun. But I do want to talk a little bit about DeFi and all the different things that are being built right now. So firstly, would you regard yourself at all as a Bitcoin maximalist?
I like the term Jameson Lopp. It was the first one I heard say it, which is Bitcoin monetary maximalist. So I believe that Bitcoin is the best money and store of value, and I think Bitcoin is the best doing for the thing that it's trying to do. But unlike some people who are just sort of, the next sentence they would say is everything else is junk. I don't think everything else is junk. I'm optimistic, particularly about securities. Securities have value. They just do, whether you like it or not. It doesn't, being a token doesn't erase the value. So I think it's a very Neanderthal idea to say like all tokens are bad and they always will be, other than Bitcoin. That's just not nuanced, not that smart Neanderthal view. But it's rooted in something that's kind of true, which is that almost all of these things are junk. So I take the technology I'm excited about, the ideas I'm excited about, but I'm definitely one of the first to say that there's a lot of just junky projects, projects that don't make sense. And I don't like the word. I think the word scam is overused. Much more common than scams, and some are scams. Much more common than scams are just real naive people, or naive plans, or just naive to the point of being negligent, almost, where people just have such a bad idea that it almost has the same function as a scam, and they just very naive. But overall, I'm kind of more open-minded than most people who might refer to themselves as pure Bitcoin maximalist.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think nuance is really important, and we're seeing, the building of Web3 and everything that you saw, since the beginning of the internet. I just think it's so. I do think it's closed-minded to not be open to what could come next. So I kind of want your opinion in terms of DeFi. What kind of value do you think it brings, and where do you see that value in comparison to Bitcoin? So I guess you would look at Bitcoin as that store of value, and DeFi and everything that's being built on Ethereum. Where do you see that playing out?
Yeah, so DeFi is pretty broad term overall, and it encompasses a lot. So kind of defining it is sometimes hard. When it first came out, it was just sort of like, it sounds like everything else, but if you get into what it really should mean, which is the two words, decentralized and finance, that's pretty easy. So you want to look at something that's truly decentralized. And then with that, you ask, well, why do you need it decentralized? Some things, it doesn't make sense to decentralized. Early in the Bitcoin era, people were talking about DAOs and stuff, just sort of decentralizing for the sake of decentralizing. It doesn't always make sense. And in some cases, like a company, it can actually be a negative. You do sort of want to have centralization. Sometimes the best companies have that, you know, Elon Musk or Jack Welch or whoever's driving it. And then the other part is finance, and that's pretty broad also. That includes lending. Lending's a huge part of finance. It includes securities, which is what I'm most interested in. So I think that it's very early stage. I think it's kind of like when electricity first came out, people were saying, wow, this is so exciting. And you had products that didn't make sense. Like you had electric shoes and electric hats, and people were like, oh, I'm making an electric hat company. You don't get it. You don't understand. Electricity's going to the moon. Electricity's going to be important. And it's like, well, yeah, but it doesn't mean that the hat makes sense. And that's kind of the way DeFi is, and more broadly distributed ledgers. The idea that you can have a ledger that is run by peers rather than a trusted person or party is a big deal. But you want to think about where that makes sense. Securities is one area that it does make sense. So I'm very excited about securities and DeFi. I've been disappointed that a lot of the kind of main groups and people that you think of as the DeFi leaders haven't been looking at securities. And I think that's due to misconceptions. You know, they think like, oh, we don't need to do regulated stuff. We'll do this other thing. And it doesn't quite work like that with securities, because securities are driven in the United States by a definition. So it's like the definition's super broad. So all the good stuff like equity and sharing profits and having real governance that actually matters, all of these kind of things, it's going to qualify it as a security. And you can't really change that definition unless you change these 85-year-old rules. So your option now is either comply or try to make something that is outside the definition, which usually is not going to end up being something good. The definition long ago already sort of captured everything that is good. So I'd like to see more DeFi and securities converge. I think that'll be powerful. And I'm sure that it will come around.
Oh, I can't hear you. I think you've just muted yourself. While you unmute. So with all of that in mind, then I kind of want to get your thoughts on XRP. Yeah, we can hear you now. I wanted to get your thoughts on XRP then, because the case is still going on. There's been a few wins. So I just wanted to understand where you stand on that, and you know whether you think it's a security or not. I know you obviously were very pro the delisting, because if it is a security, then it should be delisted. And also, if it is regarded as a security, would that be good for it? Oh, we can't hear you. We still can't hear you. Let's see if we can. No, we still can't hear you. Having some tech issues, guys. Okay, well, guys, we have a lot to talk about, so just hang on while Bruce tries to get the mic going. We still can't hear you. But while he does that, I'm gonna let you know what's coming, because like I said, I have been trying to speak to Bruce for a while, and I think we share some similar opinions when we talk about what's going on in the world in general, when it comes to COVID, when it comes to vaccines. So I definitely want to delve into that. We still can't hear you, Bruce.
Sorry.
Oh, there we go. We can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh,
yeah.
About that, I've just given
away what I want to delve into in a bit. But we'll get there. But first, I want to hear your thoughts on XRP, because that case is still going. And you know, you're obviously very interested in security. So if it is regarded as a security, how will this play out?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see nobody can predict what the outcome will be. The case isn't really so much about whether it's a security or not. And I don't think that it will rule on that. I think it's because judges typically, from what I understand, don't like to go beyond what they're tasked with. It's hard enough job to be a judge. And if the law isn't saying this is a question where the judge is tasked with deciding whether this is a security or not, I don't know if they're going to opine on that. Because that's just extra work and risk for a judge. They risk getting overturned. Ripple is obviously going to fight that if they said it is a security or not. So the suit kind of assumes it's a security, and the SEC does generally have authority to say what a security is. So XRP's argument is and Ripple's argument is, well, you're wrong. It's not a security, and here's why. So it's crucial to their defense, and so it's certainly possible that in a perfect world for them, the judge would say, yeah, you're absolutely right. You're not a security, and he or she would actually rule on that, and then it would be a win for them of the case, and it would clarify this status that it's not a security. I don't think that will happen, even if the case goes their way. I think it would be overly optimistic for them. I don't know if their lawyers are like hoping that, but they're super sophisticated and smart on this. So, I'm sure they're realistic about it. Their main goal, I think, is just to not lose, because it's sort of stacked against you when you have a case of this nature, even though you have very good lawyers or whatever. It's kind of stacked against them from day one. As far as whether it's a security or not, it's certainly, they certainly make a case for it in the complaint, and the SEC saying something is a security is pretty harsh. It's like if the DEA says something's a drug. I've used an analogy before. If the DEA goes into Walgreens and says, hey, this CBD lemonade is not really CBD, it's THC. Two things. One, it's really hard for that lemonade company to go and fight the CDC, or I'm sorry, the DEA, and two, Walgreens would be insane. You mentioned delisting. Walgreens would be insane to still keep doing that. So I couldn't believe that people were having discussions. Exchanges. Most exchanges delisted, but I couldn't believe there was any discussion. Once you have a federal regulatory authority say something is a security, therefore it's illegal for you to deal in if you're not a registered securities broker, I think they'd be crazy not to, because you're basically banking your whole future on not only hoping that Ripple will win, but hoping they win in such a way that clarifies it. And even then, it might be kind of like you're still in trouble, sort of like when a cop tells you to stop running away, even if it's a mistaken identity, you can still get in trouble for not obeying that. So once the SEC says this is a security, I think that was December 22nd or something like that, I was just like, wow. I mean, game over, for at least for exchanges for now. So yeah, I think it was smart to delist it.
Yeah, I think it was Femex that have relisted it at the moment. I think somebody else has as well. I can't really remember. But I think at the time, it was very interesting because people were very, I think there was this idea that, when they come for you and then they'll come for the next one and the next one. And so people were sort of saying, this is an example of hostility towards cryptocurrencies. It's not about XRP. So do you think that we're talking about the States, but let's we can talk about the States. Do you think that we're going to see hostility towards it, the kind of hostility that we've seen in Nigeria, for example, India, Turkey? Or do you think this was a genuine issue with XRP as an isolated case?
Yeah, I think, it's not so much isolated because there's a lot of other companies and groups in the same situation as Hot Water, but I don't see us going into a situation like India or Nigeria. A lot of those countries have been very ham-handed and not nuanced. It's just sort of like, oh, we're going to ban all crypto. And then people complain and say, okay, we're not going to ban anything. The United States has been driven more by we have very old law and a lot of work that's been done in this. So it's driven mainly by which regulatory authority is looking at something. In this case, it's the SEC. So the SEC really cares just about one thing: is it a security? If it is, was it offered properly, and is it being exchanged properly according to their rules? If it's CFTC, they care about other things, So and then there's money transmission and OFAC and other regulations that different authorities care about, and it kind of which bucket you're in. We care very much about securities, obviously being a securities broker, but most exchanges care about money transmitter license. So it depends which regulatory authority is after it. But I don't see this as a broad top-down government being anti-Bitcoin kind of thing. Even if XRP loses this, it doesn't necessarily have wide reaching impact to other cryptos, because it's certainly not Bitcoin. The SEC has specifically said Bitcoin is not a security. And they also said that Ethereum may have been a security at its offering, and you probably shouldn't do that type of offering again, but it's not now. So they've definitely acknowledged that some things are not securities when they're digital assets, so they don't have the authority over that. So it's not the same as some kind of king or prime minister or something who has like all power authority just saying, you know, this is banned, like we've seen in some of the even more authoritarian countries.
Yeah, for me personally, I feel like we've reached that. We've kind of gone over that hurdle of, could this be banned? Could something stop it? I mean, especially what's happening in Miami with the mayor. I'm so impressed. I'm so in awe. I wish we had that in London. I'm absolutely in awe. And, you know, and I think there are even some states in the US which are accepting Bitcoin for taxes. I think it was Ohio, but then they went back on that. But whatever, it's movement, and it's positive. And so I think we've kind of passed that hurdle. But, you know, we were talking earlier and you sort of mentioned Bitcoin as that sound money and that store of value, and everything else could potentially be building. And one of these companies which is building is VeChain. And VeChain have, I think I read yesterday, have recently gone live with Cyprus to create the first, I think it's a COVID-19 vaccination passport, basically using blockchain technology. So you've been really vocal about everything that we've seen so far across the last year. Firstly, I want to get your thoughts on COVID passports, because this is really hot right now. And I'm actually based in Israel I'm based in Israel for the minute, where they have COVID-19 passports. I've been turned down in certain places. I couldn't get in because I'm not vaccinated. You're shaking your head. So tell me your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think it's just crazy. We've seen this absolute insane march of authoritarianism over the last year. It's just really a human tragedy. And, you know, we've seen this many times in history, and now here we are being able to witness it firsthand, where you just have complete and total lack of logic and in the name of science, of all things. It's completely not science. It's totally politics. And you have it wrapped in with all kinds of other things, with, you know, bad social ideas and socialism and, you know, race and climate and everything else being bundled into this one, you know, basically cult, which is, you know, an authoritarian state worshiping cult. And it has its own rituals and badges and magic words, just like any other cult or, you know, twisted religion in history. And it's very murderous and very deadly to people. And it's completely political. And you have signals like a mask or a vaccine passport, or these things which are really designed for signaling much more than any real, you know, the people who wear a mask generally, like outside jogging, are doing it either because they're really stupid and they just don't have critical thinking skills and they don't understand anything, especially actual science, or more likely they're doing it for signaling, which is a kind of a strange and weird situation that we're in, where we have people so willing to give their soul to this religion called the state that they're willing to just abuse their kids even, or let all logic go out the window. I mean, you literally have people saying like, oh, I'm so, like they're bragging about getting a vaccine, which is weird enough, but then they're bragging about their kids getting it, and they have kids in masks with plexiglass around them. And there's people who are on that side. They're on the side who thinks that kindergartners who have, I calculated it the other day, I think it was 7 zeros or 4 or 5 zeros with a 7 after it, is what the odds are of a child even going to the hospital over it. So it's this extraordinarily, it's way less than a 1 in 100 kind of chance. And it gets less and less as more people are vaccinated, and you know, we have more herd immunity, more people with antibodies. You have people with something with a far less than 1% chance, and they're using it and they're putting kids behind plexiglass and taking little children who are kindergartners and making them wear a mask all day long on the playground. Just totally not logical. It's not logical. It's not protecting them in any way at all. It's a total sick social signaling thing. And so you do have a lot of very strange things going on in the world right now with this, you know, with this whole march of authoritarianism. And I think it's quite scary and dangerous. Bitcoin is one of the things that motivates me. I feel like we have so little power against this, you know, horrible march of evil. but we do have power over Bitcoin. It's the one thing that the authoritarians haven't figured out how to kill or crush or co-opt yet. So we can just sort of, you get frustrated, you can just go throw dollars at the wall and turn them into sats, and at least you're opting out in some small way.
There's a lot there. I obviously, I think, I agree with you on everything that you said. And I think that something that I saw the other day, which blew my mind, and for me, this was like the epitome of it, was parents offering their children up for the vaccine for trials. And I use the word trial because it was a trial. The news reporter said it was a trial. And these are 3-year-olds getting experimental vaccines. And parents were very excited, and they were virtue signaling. And they were sort of saying, we wanted to make sure our daughter had a say in this.
Oh,
She's 3. She's 3. Well, yeah. What kind of say does she have? If you asked her, should we be homeless for a week? She'd go, yeah, that would be really fun. Let's do that. Of course, don't do that. So my question to you is why is this happening? And also, why is everything being lumped into one? Because if you right now, you can tell how somebody believes about something by asking them one thing, right? Like if you wear a mask on your own, chances are you're probably one of those climate freaks as well, right? So how why is this a thing? Like why are things lumping together? Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah,
okay.
I think that they're lumping together. It's the nature of power and authoritarians. We have in the world makers and takers. You have people who build stuff, who do cool things, who invent things. They make restaurants and construction sites, and they invent new computers and software, and they create podcasts, and they create movies, and they do stuff. And then you have people who take it. You have people who just take it because they don't have those skills. So they build up skills that enable them to take stuff. And those skills start out at the community activist level, and they're the brand of clown in your local town who's going to all the town board meetings and making little nitpicky rules to bug people, and then they rise up and become the next level legislator. I don't know how it works in UK, but in the US it would be like a state senator or a state rep, and then they go up to Congress, and then they become a undersecretary or whatever. It's just and all of that is about accumulating more power. So you have more power over people, and you have one group of people who think that they know better, and they should have the power, and they should have the resources, and they know they should have the money, and that nobody should have $9 billion or whatever, that they should have it. Bernie Sanders should have it. AOC should have it, because they have this belief that they've been fooled into thinking that these people know how to allocate resources better. So you have these things where they say, if we nobody should be a billionaire. We should tax all the billionaires. It's all kind of in line. It's all about taking. It's all about taking, saying, that it's based on greed and jealousy and people who could never produce anything. Bernie Sanders, Nancy Pelosi, Elizabeth Warren. These people couldn't survive in one of our startups for 5 seconds. They couldn't even probably appear on your podcast and even speak coherently, other than typical nonsensical political talking points that they do on every other podcast that they do. They can't have a real conversation. You couldn't have somebody like Elizabeth Warren go in and hold their own in a Bitcoin Clubhouse room or at a Bitcoin meetup or something like that. They just don't have that skill set. They have no idea what they're talking about. They don't know how to build. They don't know how to add any value to society. So all they can do is steal from the people who do create. They can look at it and say, oh, well, Zuckerberg has more than me. Let's figure out how to, gain power over Zuckerberg, which ultimately translates into having more money. So they built up a religion around this. And the religion is one that, has its own, like I say, its own magic words and everything. And that's why it ends up being encompassed, because you have this cohesion that the members of a group get. There's human needs that people have. One of them is being part of a group. Significance is another one. Variety is another one. Carl Jung's human needs. These are things that this is why people join gangs. It's why people join cults. And this is a cult. So people join it, and and the more magic words that you have around it, you put your pronouns in your bio and you say BLM and you wear a mask and you do all of these other things, the more that people think that that's part of their identity, and the more they believe the nonsense. So people will actually put BLM in their bio thinking they're doing something good, like, oh, I care, as if those who don't put it don't care, or as if you don't put your pronoun in your bio that you're not supporting trans people or something. It's just a preposterous sort of notion, but that's how you gain power over somebody, by like a frog in the boiling water. You just get them a little bit at a time, like, oh no, Layla, just put your pronouns in your bio, Layla, just do that. Oh no, we just need you to say this. And what it is if you let the woke magic, if you're dealing with cults, okay, and you ignore them, they don't have power over you. So there's an account that I read one time about the one of these voodoo, like a witch doctor type of person who put a curse on somebody, and the person who had the curse was like, no, like they immediately changed their whole physiology, their state, and they really did become sick. So there's curses where you could put a curse on somebody and people actually die because they believe it so much. And if a foreigner goes to one of those cultures and they say, I put a curse on you, Layla, you're like, okay, and you walk out and you go to Starbucks. It doesn't hurt you. Brian Armstrong just tweeted about, he said he was commending another company because they took the tact he took, and they're saying no politics being discussed, and he said it was courageous. The thing is, it's only courageous if you do. He did make a mistake in that he engaged and he let the woke magic into his house in the first place. As soon as he hired a diversity officer, and what happened is he tweeted Black Lives Matter because the employees told him to. And then you're the frog in the boiling water. They come back. Oh, no, Brian, we want you to tweet it again. So he tweets it again. Oh, no, Brian, you got to do this now. You got to get another diversity. You got to get another one. Now you got to do the climate change. And if he didn't put a stop to it, right now, his entire company would be run by these people. Maybe they'd even throw him out. They're never going to stop. They're not going to say, oh, finally, thank goodness, Brian, finally, he gave that one Medium post, and now we know that he's on our side. He has pledged to the church of woke, and he is one of us, and we're going to let him, the high priests have approved him. They're never going to approve him. There's never enough that you can give. So the only proper response when you deal with woke lunatics is to ignore them and not be part of their religion and not let it have any effect on. You don't see these people coming to people up here in New Hampshire or people in Texas and saying, you better put your pronouns in your bio, because people would just laugh at them. And they also, there's some confidence also where people, I know that I'm a good person. I know that that my beliefs on race are actually way, way, way more productive towards the goals that we actually want with race than the actual racists who are pushing this BLM type of stuff and the other woke nonsense that they do. So I think that's the reason, you gain power from this cohesiveness, and that's how religion works. The more doctrine you have, the more things, whether it's how many times a day you have to pray, or you got to shut your lights off at a certain time. All different kind of religions have these different rituals, and the Church of Woke is no different, for sure.
Yeah, I think, you make a really good point when you say that these people who are supposedly anti-racist or whatever it is, anti-fascist and all this fun stuff, they're actually very counterproductive, and they're almost worse, I think as a woman, I can speak from like the gender equality standpoint. And I often say that Kamala Harris only got that role because she's a woman and because she's a little bit darker than you and I. That's the only reason I think she got the role. And I think everybody knows that. And in some ways, that is so offensive. Like, I would be so offended. I can't stress this enough. I'd be so offended if somebody hired me because I'm a woman. It's so, and do you know what? And I'm really true to this. I had a phone call the other day, and somebody wanted me to get involved in some kind of marketing and all this stuff. And I've had a conversation, and they're like, and we need more women in crypto. And I was trying to think to myself, okay, well, do I tell you how I feel about this, or should we just keep the conversation going? And in the end, in the end, because it's a potential client. And in the end, I was like, listen, I've got to be honest. that women in crypto thing, it's not a thing for me. It's not, this isn't going to connect us. If you're like pushing this, it's not a thing for me. Because, you know, if you're saying that you want me to be part of like your project and all this stuff because I'm a woman, then I find that offensive. I would much rather you want me to be a part of your project because of the value that I offer. Whatever that value is, it depends on who the audience is. It doesn't matter. But if I'm honest, I'm a little bit frightened. Like, I'm scared because we're going down this path. And I think before COVID, we were on a path whereby it's like, well, forget the pronouns. I'm not going to use that. You know, if you're off Twitter, it's really not happening in the real world.
Right.
But COVID is happening, and it's kind of, and it's like a real world manifestation of all this woke madness. And I don't really know what we're going to do. I don't know whether I'm really going to need to take the vaccine if I want to travel and live a normal life. I think now it's having real world implications outside of this pronoun and BLM stuff. And so this is concerning for me. Yeah.
I mean, the path to violence begins with this religious idea that we're right. And that's how wars over religion have been fought for, you know, one group prays 4 times a day, the other prays 5 times a day, or, you know, it's this belief or that belief that people, you know, that people fight over, and they have for years. And so, you know, I think it's very dangerous. You know, it's not just woke slogans that you can ignore. It has real world effect. You know, these people are, I mean, there's people being arrested right now. And, you know, you see these horrible videos. It used to be shocking, but now there's so many of them, we don't even bother being shocked. But you'll see a mother being tased in front of her kids, you know, because she's at a school board. This just happened the other day. She went to a school board meeting to complain about the mask, and she didn't wear a mask. So they tased her. It's like, what kind of society are we in? You know, tasing people and stomping on their head with boots is a bad idea. And that's, you know, that's the side that we're on. You know, when you say we're right and we have the law behind us, that's just a 100% guaranteed recipe for violence. And we see that, and it's, and interestingly, the problem isn't seen by the people who are pushing it, because they're the cause of the problem. I mean, they're the reason that there's so much violence. So they're looking for any other solution other than that to blame. You know, they usually racism or something like that, when it's really just, you know, kind of bad policies and an overall statist, pro-statist kind of, outlook.
So I have a question. Greta Thunberg.
What?
She's been, you know, Greta.
Oh, Greta, yeah.
Greta. Yeah, Greta. Okay, so look, there's this push for a certain kind of there's this huge environmental push right now. Albeit Greta's been silent since COVID, she's sort of coming back on the move. I'm sure she's an innocent, very nice individual. But behind her, there's a machine. And there's 100% a machine. I can see, because I can tell by the marketing. I can tell by the fact that she's almost an 18-year-old girl who they continuously present as a 10-year-old. You know, so it's kind of like children and all this stuff. But do you think that there's actually a sinister agenda behind all of this? And before you answer, I think in some cases there is. So if I look at, like, let's just take the Democratic Party as an example. So I genuinely think that they want to keep the minorities down. Like, I genuinely think that they want to keep Black people down. Like, I genuinely think that. Joe Biden says, you know, you're not Black if you don't vote for us. I mean, how revolting is that? And he's done nothing. I was reading tweets today. He's done more for, like, the Asian community and so on than he's done for any Black people in America. All of their promises have fallen through. You know, you have even in the UK, to be honest, but it's more of a thing in America. You have policies which reward bad behavior. There's there's nothing is incentivizing any good behavior, keeping families together. They're incentivizing broken families, incentivizing riots and so on. It's so stupid. So I do think that's sinister. But overall, do you think there's actually a genuine sinister kind of push here?
Yeah, I do. A lot of times the people who are involved are unwitting, and evil kind of evolves organically. It's like it's like a virus. I was a medic when I was in the Navy. They call it a corpsman. So I worked in hospitals and stuff like that. And the program I was in, there was a lot. We were in the water a lot, and so the littlest tiny injury on your foot can turn into a really bad, nasty injury if you're in the salt water and you don't clean it properly. Just a little sliver, a little cut. It can get quite nasty. And if you just never take care of it, keep getting worse. I mean, you could end up in the hospital over it. I mean, you could probably die, really. A bad enough infection could kill you. And that's the way that a lot of this is. A lot of people aren't really, it's not so much that they have a master plan for evil, but they have a plan for furthering their own power, and that power corrupts. And they have a plan for, just this kind of collectivist sort of, you are right about, I think, it's a very interesting thing with race in America, where we have the group who talks about race the most. I agree with you, is by far the most racist, and I think their policies have been terrible. And I think that's ironically why. So check this. I just pulled this up. This is interesting. So Philander Castile, Democrat mayor, Democrat governor, Democrat state. George Floyd, Democrat mayor, Democrat governor. Alton Sterling, Democrat mayor, Democrat governor. Freddie Gray, Democrat mayor, Democrat governor. Eric Gardner, Democrat mayor, Democrat governor. Dwayne Wright, Michael Brown, Breonna Taylor, every single one of them, it's overwhelmingly Democrat. It's a Democrat-appointed police chief, Democrat police unions who appoint who endorse the Democrats, Democrat legislatures, blue states in many cases, a Democrat governor in every single case, Democrat mayor in every case. So my question is, is it a problem of racism that caused these people to die? Or is it something else? If it is racism, then we should say, well, why is there so much racism in all of the Democrat communities? If it's not racism, we should ask, what it is. I think the true answer is more nuanced. It's easy to say it's Trump's fault. They all died because orange man racist. Like, really? Well, if you have a Democrat mayor, Democrat governor, Democrat appointed police chief, and a police union that endorse the Democrats, and all the laws are written by Democrats, and they're enforcing the Democrats, and most of the police actually are Democrats too, is it really racism? They just came out, the attorney general, who's black, said that in the George Floyd case, there's no evidence that Chauvin was racist. And of course there isn't, because if there was, we would have known it. If ever in his entire life Derek Chauvin made one racist comment or one racist joke or did anything at all racist, if he was slightly racist to an ex-girlfriend in high school, we would have heard about it. Believe me, we would have heard about it. So the fact is, there wasn't any racism at all regarding this. And most of these other cases, there wasn't racism at all. The problem isn't racism. The problem is statism. Statism is the problem. You have a bunch of boneheaded authoritarians. Eric Garner died because of a loose cigarette law. So you have these people who say, oh, there ought to be a law. And that's your typical Democrat kind of thing. Bernie Sanders wants to regulate deodorant or whatever. And
does he actually? I didn't know that.
Yeah, that a joke? He mentioned that same week. He said he wanted to regulate Uber. But you end up with this situation where the real problem is statism. Massachusetts, where we used to live, Boston has 4 times the cops that San Jose has. And they have even more crime. And a lot of these places, they have more cops, bigger budgets. Why do they have so much crime? And it's easy to just blame it on racism, but it's especially confounding if you blame it on the other party who's not even there. How does Trump affect Louisville? He's not there. The fault of the Louisville violence should, if anybody, should go to those elected officials who are overwhelmingly Democrat. And if it is racism, I think there is some racism, but it's actually on the left side. But to be fair, I could do a soundbite just like the left does, and I could say, the left's all racist, and they're the real racists, and that's not quite accurate either. I don't think a lot of them intend to be racist. I think they're putting racist policies out there. And they're unintentionally racist, which is ironic. But the bigger problem then race is just statism. If you have a whole bunch of stupid laws and a whole bunch of cops, you're going to have violence and you're going to have issues and you're going to have people killed of all colors.
What you said actually reminds me of the whole gender pay gap issue, and I think it's also far more nuanced. You can look at the facts and you can say, okay, well, women are statistically paid less than men doing the same job or whatever it is. You could look at the facts and say more Black people are killed by X than white people, whatever it is. But it's far more nuanced. Just to go on a side note, I'm one of those people that I don't believe in the gender pay gap at all. I'm a huge Jordan Peterson fan, and he breaks it down beautifully.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like he's fantastic about it. But I think that with these policies, I do. You see, with America is far more. The race relations there are far more intense than around the rest of the world. Okay, so bear with me for a sec. In the UK, we don't have this kind of animosity that you guys have. Even in Canada, they don't have it. And I've spoken to a lot of Canadians about this. And during that time of George Floyd and then all the BLM protests in the UK, we actually started to have very similar protests. And it was actually a really sad sight to see because our communities are so integrated. It's just not a thing for us. Of course, racism is always a thing, but like to the extent that you have these racial tensions in the US, we don't really have that in the UK. And I do a lot of Bitcoin work on TikTok, and TikTok is very heavy Gen Z, and it's constantly race after race after race. The issues scrolling through, there's so many issues, and it's just like, why do white people always say this? And then a white person comes in and says, why do Black people always say? And then a Canadian comes in, and a Canadian's like, what's wrong with you Americans? It's just you guys doing this. And I can understand why, but my concern is like, Americanization is real. Americanization is a real thing. And so I worry that this kind of racial tensions will spread globally.
Yeah, we'll export it. Well, the thing is, we didn't used to be like this either. This is a new thing. Yes, we've had racism and racial issues going back hundreds of years, and we have, very bad slavery and other things in our history. Yes. But this new thing, this whole thing where everybody is segregated by race, that's new. That's like the last 5 years has been on a huge uptick. Because I remember I was talking to somebody, and they happened to be like a Gen Z. It was a college student, and he said to me, I said something, and he says, well, that's easy for you to say, you're a white male. And I was like totally shocked the first time I heard that. I was like, what are you talking about? You're judging me by the skin color? I couldn't believe it. Now you hear that every 5 minutes. I actually stopped identifying myself as male or white just to get people to leave me alone. And it works great, by the way, with the wokes. The wokes are every single conversation they want to put me in a box, and I just simply say, please don't assume my race and please don't assume my gender. And then they get really angry, especially about the gender thing. Well, you're obviously a man. I say, as I said, please don't assume my gender. I'd rather not. I'd like to be judged by my words, not by being put in the little box that you can, so you can say, oh, he's the wrong skin color. His opinion is less valuable. No, thank you. I'd rather have my opinions be judged not by what somebody else's perception is about what my gender is. So this whole thing was kind of invented. The first BLM protests kind of fell flat. They were run by idiots. But that movement kept trying to come back, and it was mainly the anti-Trump media who really ran with this racist thing, which I don't really buy necessarily. Trump certainly had a lot of problems, and he made some stupid comments. If you talk about stupid comments being evidence of racism, there's no comparison at all between him and Biden. Biden has said absolutely ridiculous things, much worse than Trump, and he's actually had much worse policies too. So and a lot of the things that Trump supposedly said he didn't even say. One of the biggest ones that has been repeated continually by the media is this lie that he said that neo-Nazis are fine people. And he specifically said the opposite of that. He said, I am not talking about the neo-Nazis or white nationalists. So if you say that in a sentence, and in the same sentence you clarify I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and white nationalists, then you can't use that as a quote. That didn't stop the New York Times and every other lying media from saying that. And it was even repeated by Biden in the debate. So you have this huge thing in the national consciousness of tens of millions of people, which is a lie. And there's hundreds and hundreds of examples like that pushed this race narrative. So that contributed to it. And then this idea, this leftist collectivist, socialist communist idea that people should be put into boxes like, oh, the white people over here and black people over here, and you have this experience and privilege and all of this other stuff. And then you end up inevitably with people saying, white people say this and black people say that. And I found that very disturbing. That wasn't a thing. And it's really sad with Gen Z because the media and the leftists has pushed this idea into the Gen Z's head that, everybody with a red hat or every Republican or whatever is some kind of almost caricature. I always want to ask, I'm like, where are all these racists? You talk about it all the time. Where are these where are the real racists? I don't see very many of them at all. Like when we talk about like all these racial issues, as far as like real actual racists, like actual neo-Nazis and actual KKK types, it's an extraordinarily tiny number. And so it's like, it's almost like they're living in 1950, that they think that people go home and, mutter the N-word about somebody because they don't like the skin color. And the same thing, you see this with to a lesser degree, women and gays and other things where you have this kind of Gen Z attitude like, oh yeah, it's going to be real hard for her to get a job in software because she's a woman. It's like, where is that a thing actually? Show me a CEO who's a tech CEO who's legit sitting there saying, oh, I got to fill this engineering job. We really need another C++ coder, but the only ones who applied, one of them's kind of brown and the other one's a woman. I mean, that's just not a thing. That person would be such an outlier. They'd be such a weirdo. They wouldn't even be a normal. I mean, do they exist? Yeah, sure. You can dig it up. I mean, the media will find these people. It's even for the media, it's hard. You got to really dig to find somebody who actually will look you in the eye and say, no, women don't know math as well as men. I mean, it's a caricature. You don't need to spend any more effort on that character than you do on somebody who thinks any other ridiculous thing. They're not a mainstream part of society, but the media has tried to push it and make it seem like, half the country is racist, sexist, homophobic, anti-Asian now is another new thing. And they have this horrible murder. And they immediately try and make it into a race issue. I think it's just a murder issue. The guy who killed the original group of people who mostly were Asian, it seemed that he was just a crazy, horrible, evil person. And even if it was motivated by race, it's like, oh, okay, but does that mean it's a trend? It's very easy for the media to manipulate these things in a way that increases division, and people start thinking each other. It's very sad. I think people think more in terms of color in the last 5 years than ever before. You see somebody and then they start to think because they've been told and because the left has pushed, say black people are this way and then white people are this way. Then when you do hire that engineer, you have some people who think, oh, we hired a black engineer. And that's a tragic thing. That is just evil. And I blame the left for that. I don't want to see somebody as a black engineer. I don't even want to care about it. And we shouldn't care. And this division and this idea, categorizing people by race is a bad way to categorize. And I use that line a lot. I tweet it every single time I see something stupid. And it's oftentimes big corporations. Citizens Bank did it the other day. They have a thing, black bank customers do this. Who cares? I don't care what color skin somebody has, how much balance they have in their, black people like the drive-in window more. Like, why? Why do you need to do it? And I respond every time with that. And the reason I use that line is because it's hard to attack. I just simply say, categorizing people by the color of their skin is a bad way to categorize people. And I think that's a Jordan Peterson line, actually. And it's because I learned if you get into a dialogue, you get into an argument. I don't want to get into an argument. I'm just saying a statement that's hard for them to disagree with. So anyway, I think that it's tragic that the media and the left have, and the right too, but especially the left and the media has really pushed this narrative to put people in boxes and divide people. And I feel horrible. And the biggest victim of it is the people that are supposedly trying to benefit from this. The biggest drawback, I see people now where I get resumes where the first thing they mentioned on their resume is that their race. I get resumes and they'll say, I'm a fill in the, I'm this race. And I'm an engineer, kind of like you women, I'm a woman in Bitcoin. If your first thing that you're putting on your resume is your race, and then the second and third thing is some race-related club that you're in or race-related thing, I feel bad for you. And you've been sold a bill of goods by the left who isn't there to help you. They're there to get your votes, and they view it as the black vote, for example, which they think is their birthright, just like when the Democrats were in league with the plantations and the KKK. They were some of the biggest racists historically in history, and there was no like party switch. But I think it's just absolutely tragic what the media has been doing.
Yeah, I obviously totally agree with it all. And I think that I used to work as a traditional journalist in London, and my time there was fascinating, and I knew I didn't belong. I knew it. I didn't know what the problem was until I left, but I felt like something wasn't right. What wasn't right was the way that I saw the world. And I think I made a comment about the Me Too campaign. I was working on a Sunday, so it was really chilled. We're all just only a few of us in the office in the newsroom, and I made a comment about the Me Too campaign. And I was absolutely slaughtered for it. It was so unprofessional. People just came after me in the newsroom, and the news editor did nothing. And I'm like, what is happening? And you can't say anything. You can't communicate anything. And I think you're totally right when you say that if the most interesting, especially on Twitter, if the most interesting thing about you in your bio is that is the color of your skin, your sexuality, and your gender, you must be a pretty boring person. I feel I have so much to say. And if the most interesting thing about me is talking about being female, like I'm pretty damn boring then, because, there's not really much exciting to say about that. So it's a real tell if somebody puts that at the top of their resume, it's a real tell. So, okay, we've been on for nearly an hour, so I don't want to keep you too long. But moving forward with all of this, I spoke about this with Michael Arrington, and he says that we're going down a dark path and eventually there'll be a flippening and it will change. A good friend of mine said that he sees the next 30 years as a dark time. What are your thoughts? Do you think that, there'll be a correction at some point?
I hope so. I do see us going into very dark territory, and we've done this many times in history where you do have these long periods of darkness, because once you have authority, like they have with all the lockdowns and the masks and stuff like that, it's much harder for the people to get that back. It's much easier for them to just increase once you have this big, huge authoritarian apparatus of tyranny. And once you have that in the power of the authoritarians, which we have now, it's 10 times harder to get it back. And so it's much easier for them to just add some new thing, like to say, okay, now it's the next vaccine. They're already talking about these.
Yeah, every 6 months.
Yeah. We just know that this 1 in 100-year virus is here forever now. So you're going to need another vaccine passport in 6 months, and then you're going to have biosurveillance, and then it's like, well, shouldn't we also use that to stop the child molesters too and save the children? And if we're going to stop the child molesters, shouldn't we also stop the human traffickers? And also, what about the drug dealers? And
yes.
Maybe we should just stop the drug users too, and before you know it, you get this thing where it's like, oh, okay, you're a drug user, or you didn't. There's people who are saying that, who basically treat people who wear a red hat as a terrorist. This whole, it's a very bad combination when you have huge authoritarianism with zealots and lunatics. And so I do worry about it. I'm optimistic about technology. I'm optimistic about human nature. Okay. I'm optimistic about people's ability to fight back, and new ways to fight back, like technology. You can opt out through Bitcoin or something like that. But it is scary overall. I try and be optimist. I really hope that there's a backlash. The good news is there's a lot of people. I mean, you look at Florida, people just opt out. They're just like, man,
I'm so
not being a member of the church or woke. Thank you. And there's got to be something internal where people say, wait a minute, I'm on the side that's tasering moms and locking kindergartners in a plexiglass shield with a mask on their face all day long while they're on the playground for something that has a 1 in 10,000 chance of killing them. What have we done here? What are we thinking?
Sorry, there's a spider on my mic. I just jumped. Sorry, there's a spider on my mic.
I was distracted earlier because my dog was chewing my cord, but we moved him out of the room now.
We're gonna move the mic because I don't like spiders. I'm terrified. Go on, sorry, continue.
Yeah, but that's what I think. I feel like it is a very dark time, but I'm cautiously optimistic. We do have some checks and balances in place and other things. I would like to see, it's very hard to fight this kind of stuff because the best people to fight it are the ones who don't want to. The people who are trying to build, who just want to mind their own business. Naval has mentioned before that he doesn't want anything to do with politics. It's divisive, zero-sum game. But the problem is if we all sit by, the lunatics are going to take over the asylum. These people are absolutely evil. And we can't just say, oh, it's Republicans versus Democrats, or it's this versus that. It's evil versus good. And we can't sit on the sidelines as much as I would like to. I would like to just never even mention it. I wouldn't even like to talk about it. There's not a lot of gain, even just coming on and talking about it. There's more harm than gain, and you can end up in the sights of the woke or the Antifa, and they could try and make things miserable for you for a little while. But you sort of have to, because if you don't, those people who've spent a life figuring out how to get power over others are in a very good position now to just continue to increase that power. And I tweeted the other day, my friend told me a story about his family from Iraq, and they had worked really hard they made money ages ago. And then the patriarchs of the family were like, hey, we have enough money now. We can afford with trusts and stuff to send everybody to school. Everybody's going to be an academic. So they're all academics and poets and thinkers and scientists, and wonderful. And I said, that sounds awesome. And he said, yeah, they were taught growing up, you don't need to be in the military service, and political service is a little bit beneath you. You can be an academic or a philosopher, and our family has enough resources that we're going to put a priority on schooling. And I said, that sounds awesome. And he said, no, that's not the end of the story. He said, Saddam came along and they couldn't do anything about it. He just took over, and those who fought him were killed. So you can't just stay above the fray, and you can't just ignore politics. Politics won't ignore you. These people will kill you over a loose cigarette, just like they killed Eric Garner. And it was the statists who killed Eric Garner, not racists, not Donald Trump. It's statists. Statism is the most evil religion. And the statists out there they won't kill you, but they will order somebody to kill you over anything. No offense is too trivial. Wearing a mask, loose cigarettes. One of the other ones on my list there was killed over a warrant, and the original warrant was basically over a joint. I think it was a misdemeanor or something. So, the state of the AOC, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren crowd will murder you dead for not pledging to the Church of Woke. So you got to just opt out, get away from the Church of Woke, and focus on peace and stuff. But we do have to fight it. I mean, I think that it's worth fighting some of these authoritarian things. I'm personally becoming more and more against masks. We have the mandate is ended in our state, but I'm more getting along the Tucker Carlson line, which is, I'm thinking about saying, hey, I'm offended if you're wearing a mask. Your mask is making me uncomfortable. Please take it off. Because we just have to stop the insanity. Otherwise, they'll just, they'll put shots in the arms of kids and having them wear armbands and every other crazy thing. So, but I am optimistic about people' ability to do that. People are kind of fed up and hope, and the ideas of the woke crowd are so bad. The lockdowners and the wokes, they're all the same, as you mentioned. The climate, BLM, lockdowners, woke pronouns, they're all the same.
Trump derangement syndrome.
Of idiots. And as I mentioned, one important point is, as I said, woke magic only works on yourself. And you talked about when you're in a newsroom, the professions that are have already pledged to the Church of Woke, they have it the hardest. So you can't be a journalist, an entertainer. Look at Gina Carano. She gets canceled from one of the most popular shows because she didn't want to put pronouns in her bio, but that's just because, same as Brian Armstrong, she was in the space to begin with. You won't see somebody else. You won't see Kid Rock getting canceled like that, even though he's an entertainer, because he never participated. Her biggest mistake was to engage them in the first place. She should just discounted them as lunatics that they are, and maybe she'd still have her job. But certain professions, media, obviously politics, academia, and the press and a couple others, you just can't say anything. Academics just can't say anything. I feel really bad for people in academia, but there's a lot of people on the other side who know that this is crazy and they're fighting against it, or they're just opting out and just not allowing somebody to say, because the lunacy gets crazier and crazier. And what happens is, as more people opt out, they have less power. I mean, you can't go to like a Republican, and I don't mean to always make it about Republican Democrat, but I'm just saying it's harder to attack your typical like Ted Cruz with some woke thing because he's already opted out. He's like, no, it's not a thing. So who do they attack? They attack academics. Talk to an academic, talk to somebody in the media, or talk to an entertainer. And all three of those people, I guarantee you, will tell you that they're pressured. I know an academic who was outright pressured just to basically pledge to the church. They actually went to this is an adult professor. The university went to this adult professor and said, you need to read this book. It was a book about critical race theory, because somebody in their class said some preposterous thing that, like they didn't say the right magic words. But as more people opt out, eventually, they're going to eat their own, and you'll have your own, Ellen was roasted because she did something earlier. You have your own members of the Church of Woke who are getting tried for heresy. It's like, oh, okay, you did these and these statements, but you didn't say this other statement, or you didn't pledge to this group, or you didn't donate enough, or you didn't give enough of your soul. So you're going to have even academics, but they're all wimps because they need the jobs really badly. And so you don't see the academics, fight it, but eventually you will, because the woke lunacy won't have anybody to feed on but itself. And then they'll starve and then hopefully die down. We hope.
Yeah, we do hope. And I think that you make a really important point. And it's something that I've really actively tried to do, is as I've grown my own audience, people know where I stand. So nobody can hold me to any BS standard of any kind, right? So like since the beginning of lockdown, I've said I'm not okay with it. Since masks, I've said I'm not okay with it, for the very reason that you've said, because, it's a gradual, it's masks today, but what else is it tomorrow? It's forced medical experiments on children tomorrow.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. I don't ever want to be held to account by my audience for, not being woke enough. Like if you're woke, leave, leave. You
got to be uncancelable. And you have to treat it just like a crazy religion. If somebody came in and said, oh, Laylah, the moon god requires you to turn your light switch on and off 4 times a day, and you really ought to be posting that you're doing this and say, hey, I did the light switch thing, or, whatever. And you just say, no, and you move on. That's the only response for these folks, because they're violent. Yeah. I mean, if you get into it with them, they might kill you, so you're better off just ignore them.
I mean, just last point on that. I work with quite a few really amazing different companies in the space, and I have a really good relationship with one of the CEOs, and he told me that somebody reached out to him and was just like, how do you have Layah representing your company? Have you seen her tweets? I was just like, I only work with good people. I only work with non-cancelable types. So good luck, So they thought that was really funny. And the CEO himself is super red-pilled. So he was like, yeah, it's chill. It's not not a problem. But it's been so good talking to you, Bruce. I've been really excited to chat to you. I've seen your tweets. And to be honest, I was surprised when I saw certain things that you tweeted. And I was like, oh, wow, we're really on the same page. I was really surprised. So it was really refreshing. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's refreshing to talk to you, too. It's great to, it's probably important. So I'm glad I did this, because we should all be talking about this, and hopefully, some people maybe on the fence or maybe even a little bit on the woke side will just look at this and wake up, because there's a lot of really, really good people. I have a lot of, I didn't really come from the left, but I certainly, I lived in Massachusetts. I have a lot of very left issues, like I've been talking about anti-war and police violence and the drug war for 20 years. So I definitely have a lot of camaraderie with a lot of people on the left who've been, just driven to this insanity. They got to step back and look at it. So I think it's important what you're doing. So keep up the good work, keep being uncancelable. I think that's one of the most important things in today's world, because then you can actually speak truth. And that probably makes you one of the top journalists in the world right now. You know how rare it is? Like when you said journalist, like there's barely, a dozen actual journalists. It's certainly not any of the people at any of the media, propaganda mouthpieces. New York Times is just a media mouthpiece for a very narrow, specific thing. And they're even in the case of like, they're within wokes talking to other wokes. They're like, they're starting to attack each other. You have a whole bunch of infighting with the reporters there. It's really hilarious. It's an ever dwindling sphere of influence and readers, because it's just a bunch of ultra blues arguing with each other about who put the pronouns in their bio first, and nobody cares. And then the rest of their so-called news, which isn't even journalism by any stretch, it's just mouthpiece talking points for state media. So you're in a great position to be actual truth teller and you can only be a truth teller if you're uncancelable. So that's good for you.
Yeah, I hope so. That is the goal. I just kind of want freedom, normality, and yeah, if we don't have freedom, we don't have anything. And it kind of comes down to when you don't allow people to take personal responsibility. It's just socialism. When you don't allow people to take personal responsibility, they just won't. Right. No one will do anything. Like I've even seen here in Israel, they have a scheme what was similar to what we had in the UK, furlough, where they pay people to do nothing for a year. And it's an issue here. People are getting paid. They're still getting paid, and people aren't really going back to work. And then it brings all of us down to the lowest common denominator.
And it robs them of a year of experience they could have gotten doing something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Terrible precedent.
Yeah, I just hope things do get better and we can live a more free life. I'm trying to come to Florida because I just love that it's open. So that's the goal. But thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure, and hopefully we can catch up and have a more positive discussion at some point.
By all means, sounds good. It was great to talk to you.
All right, bye guys, and thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you all next week.